Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rock star professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hi, Haley. Welcome to the Your Career Story podcast. I am so excited to have you on today.
Hi. Yeah, I am so excited too. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, great. Well, hi, audience. My name is Haley Hoover, and I live in New York City. I'm the Associate Director of Client Relations for Refinery 29, and I mainly work with all of our fashion, retail, and beauty advertisers executing high-level branded content, which includes articles, videos, custom photo shoots, and working with influencers and kind of filtering all of that out on refinery29.com and our social handles.
That's really awesome. And so tell me, I mean, we got connected through mutual friends a couple of years ago in New York, which was really fun. I've been following along on your journey. And so you are not from New York City originally. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you got to. You've worked at some really impressive brands. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how did you go from place to place?
Yeah, it's a funny story, and it's one that I enjoy telling mostly because I didn't think that I could land where I've landed. Mostly because
Wait, why? Why did you not think that?
I didn't have the experience. My husband and I came to New York and we did not have any connections. We did not have internships. We barely studied in school, kind of what you should study to work in and around the fashion industry. And I had these big dreams and I really didn't know how to accomplish them. So yes, it's crazy.
So what did you want to be when you were a little girl? That's a fun question.
Yeah, it is a really fun question. I wanted to be a fashion stylist.
Okay.
And in high school, I was voted most likely to work at Teen Vogue. And I just love clothes. And I wanted to work with clothes in some capacity.
Yeah.
And that kind of takes it back to why we moved to New York. I was actually working in Nashville as a stylist, a fashion stylist in the country music industry, and was just out of school and kind of had always wanted to be in New York. And I was newly married, and my husband and I were just like, well, we should go now. Let's go try New York now, because if we lose everything, we haven't lost that much at all.
Yeah. You're like, we are newlyweds. We don't have a ton of money, and now we're going to move to New York. We can't go much down from here.
That is code for it. We were broke. So if we were broke in New York or broke in Nashville, it really didn't matter. You might as well be broke in New York, I guess. So yeah, we moved to New York, and really we did kind of set up some goals for ourselves, and we have kind of.
So you moved with no job.
No job. It's really tough to get a job, especially in fashion, remotely. And if you're looking to go to New York, just because there truly are a million girls and guys around the corner that any company can hire. So,
right.
Well, I take that back. I did have a job. My husband didn't have a job. I was working at Nordstrom in Nashville, and we had applied to hundreds of jobs, just entry-level stuff in New York, and really hadn't gotten anything. So about 3 weeks before we were moving to New York, I told my store manager at Nordstrom, I was like, oh, we're leaving. I did see a role at the Nordstrom rack in New York City. And she said, oh, I'll put in a good word. And I ended up
Union Square one?
Yes, the Union Square one.
I love that Nordstrom rack.
I did not love working on it, but
you didn't love working there. I could get that.
We had a great experience. That is great because the team. I ended up interviewing, and I got this role as the assistant manager for the women's wear. And we just were like, I'll take it because one of us probably needs to have a job and it's cash and like we'll figure it out. So we got to New York. I started working at the rack. I literally came home the very first day, and we were with my cousin in Astoria at the time, and I was like, I hate it. You had to wear a lime green t-shirt. It was so awful. The hours were insane. It was holiday time, so I think
Oh no.
I would work until 2 a.m. We had to zip and button every coat back up. And you would work till 2 a.m. And then my boss would be like, okay, I'll see you at 6 a.m. You have to set the floor. And I was like, this is absurd. I'm only getting 4 hours of sleep. But like, I don't know, I had to show up to work. So
how did you move on? How long were you there? And then how did you move on to your next opportunity?
So I was there for 3 months. I had talked to my cousin who was a dancer in New York City, and she had kind of been through the grind. And she was like, my first job was 3 months and I hated it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 months. So I would, the nice thing about working retail was like, you're off during the week. So I would apply. And I found this job on like Indeed.com for a showroom assistant for Longchamp, the handbag company. And the HR person put a phone number there. So I called.
I love that.
I was like, I got to talk to a person. I can't be the resume in the pile anymore.
Yes. So I love that you did that because so many people don't take that initiative and just like will passively apply online. And I always talk about that's like my big MO is like, you cannot just apply online and not expect to try and talk to a human being at the same time. Like you have to do both.
Yeah, totally. And I had been that pile, and my resume had been in that pile for so many other jobs that I was just I knew I didn't have a lot of experience, but I knew that like working from retail, I was good with people. So I called, and I think the job description talked about wholesale, and you were working with the wholesale team. And luckily, for about a year, I had been a buyer at a really tiny boutique in Jackson, Tennessee. So I called and I was like, I have showroom experience. I've worked as a buyer before. I understand the wholesale process. And so I got an interview.
That's awesome. So you basically went on there and said, hey, these are the things that I can provide value for. I've already done it in the past. This is how I can do it for you in the future.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the one thing that's really helped me through my whole entire process is connecting the dots for people when they maybe couldn't, and just calling that out. Like, where I see you put this language on your job description, here's the language that I have that kind of fits the bill. Mostly just because I've learned that although all along the way, I've learned that I'm capable, not everyone else. People are busy or people are talking to a million people, so they can't necessarily pull that out, by themselves. So I've had to be responsible for like proving my own worth, especially initially. So yeah, great news. I interviewed, I got the job. I started managing Longchamp's showroom in Soho, and I went from working in a basement in Union Square to a third floor showroom in Soho with like a beautiful terrace. I actually worked alone. The wholesale team worked up on Madison Avenue. So I was by myself every day with handbags around me. I loved it.
Did you feel like you had made it at that point? Like when you're young and you're like, I'm living the Sex and the City dream right now. I'm in fashion. I'm in this showroom. I am living my dream life.
I think I've had nuggets of that. I think, I'm someone who is also really impatient. So I won't say like, I immediately breathe a sigh of relief. But I did for like a little while there because I knew where I came from. Like I knew those awful hours and that ugly green t-shirt that I had to wear. And now I was working with like the buying teams of Nordstrom and Neiman's and Saks. And like, I was so grateful for the experience. And Longchamp is a really cool company. It's family owned. And they're very French. So I learned a lot about like the French luxury shopping experience. And I worked really, really hard at that job. And it's funny because when I ultimately did leave, I left a turnover report of like, here's how I do things in the showroom. And I'm still in touch with my old boss there, and they still use that. And it's been 3.5 years since I've left.
love that. Making an imprint on it, even after you're gone.
Exactly. So it was great. I think after a little while, it's a small company, so I realized that they weren't going to be able to move me up. And a showroom assistant job is a great job in fashion because you learn a lot of the basics, but it's also highly administrative. And after a little while, I just felt like I outgrew it. And I had.
What do you feel like was the number one thing you learned from that experience?
I learned a lot, but to be incredibly detail oriented and to be proactive. One of the things that I was asking for more because I learned how to like print out line sheets and organize an Excel doc of samples really quickly. So I asked for like, what else can I do? And again, people are busy, so they can't necessarily tell you. But one of the things that I saw was that a lot of our mom and pop shops across the country were putting up, kind of not great images of our product on social media. And it was kind of painting an incorrect picture of the brand. So I went to my boss, and I was working with the wholesale team, but also the marketing team used the showroom a ton for events and dinners and PR events. So I would work really closely with the marketing team. And I kind of was like, I really enjoy what they're doing a little bit more than what I'm doing. Like I realized I don't want to be a buyer. That's a lot of math. I'd rather be a marketer and kind of do all these cool things in my opinion instead. So I went to my boss.
You were just focusing on what your strengths were and trying to do more of that. You're like, wow, this doesn't interest me. This interests me more. Now, how can I do more of it?
Yeah. And I think to answer your question, like I learned what I didn't want to do in that job.
Yeah, that's so good.
Which was helpful to kind of like focus my vision a little bit more. So I ended up writing the social media guidelines for Longchamp USA and just made a proposal about how we should be presenting our brand on Facebook and Instagram. And those guidelines are now in the hands of all of the specialty stores that buy Longchamp. And it just was something that needed to be done. And no one else had the time to do it. So I got to do it. And I think that was the other thing is like, I learned what I didn't want to do and maybe more of what I wanted to do long term. And I also just learned and you hear this all the time of like, if you see something that needs to get done, just don't wait for someone to ask you, just do it and take a stab. Like most of the things in my career, I really haven't known how to do the first time I've done them, but I've just like taken a stab and someone will correct you.
Yeah.
They'll fix it, or it may look totally different as the end result, but I think it matters the most that you took the initiative to do something.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that I've seen that a lot in my career where there's plenty of things that I have done in my career that I had no idea how to do. Like I didn't have a degree in it. I didn't, I'm thinking even back when I worked at the New York Stock Exchange and one day someone said, hey, go in front of a camera and just, report live what's going on behind you. I mean, I had been there for not very long. Had no idea. If I were to look back on that first webinar, I probably would have been mortified, from that one to the last one. But we can't avoid the potential of failure. You just got to try, and you're going to probably screw it up, and it's definitely not going to be perfect. Yeah. But like separating yourself from the emotion of that helps you actually get ahead because it helps people see you in a different light and helps them see if you are taking the initiative, kind of what you just said, you might take the initiative on something else. And that's the type of person that an employer really wants to have on their team. So I love that you did that.
And that kind of fear of not knowing how to do something, the more you kind of flex that muscle, I've found, that fear of like failing in that way goes away because one, most people aren't going to just try something. And two, there's plenty of other people around you that have done those things before or can point you in the right direction. So, even just moving to New York, I realized people are not going to call me from little old Jackson, Tennessee, and asked me to come take a showroom assistant job in New York. Like, you just got to get there and you have to figure it out. So
Yep.
taking a
There's
stab,
not always a clear plan for everything.
no, there's like almost never a clear plan. And
No. As soon as you make a plan, my dad told me, we're talking about business plans, and he said, yeah, make a business plan. Day one, it'll change. Go ahead, make a plan, but it will not look how you're expecting it to look.
at least you got that outline and you can move things around, and it's just,
yeah, you just got to explore and have a little bit. I think if you have a little bit of fun with it too, when you're in that phase of like, I don't know what's going on, it frees you up to not have it be perfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love what you said about rejection too, or flexing that rejection muscle. There's actually a challenge. I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but I heard about it in another podcast where it's like the rejection challenge. The purpose, doing something every day for like 30 days that you'll get rejected from, so that you have this resilience against rejection. So I love what you said there, because I think that's 100% true. Okay, so you were at Longchamp. Tell me about your next opportunity. What happened next?
Okay, so I told you that I was really starting to enjoy seeing the marketing team work at Longchamp, and they partnered with a lot of publishers, a lot of magazines, to tell their brand story and to do really fun things. Like the Vogue team did a partnership with influencers creating custom bags at Longchamp, and Cosmo came in and through, I think it was Cosmo, maybe it was Elle. They did a big fancy dinner in the showroom, and I would talk to those girls on those publishing teams to get to know them. And
that's cool.
I think I really like that. Like, I would really love to work at a magazine. Ultimately, it was like work at Vogue. Total side story is that my husband had already randomly gotten a job at Vogue, so I couldn't actually work at Vogue, but I could work at other magazines. So
under the same brand.
Yeah, under the same umbrella company. So I started to focus on that, knowing that unless someone quit at Longchamp, I probably wasn't going to get promoted there. And people weren't leaving the company because it's a great company. So I started applying. I took a few, informational meetings on the editorial side at a few magazines, but editorial jobs don't pay little. They're usually freelance. You don't get benefits. It's really crazy hours. And I was kind of like, I just want to work on the marketing team. I think I could be creative, and I think I could have the stability and work-life balance that I would like to have in the city. So I applied. I submitted my resume to the portal of Condé Nast, like just sort of the overall job portal. And,
which is, my opinion, smarter to do anyways.
Yeah. Well, the great thing was, what happened was I just kind of matched some of the language on the job descriptions that I saw, and it picked me up, and I got a call about a job at Brides magazine. And I was really proud of myself. Fun. Yeah, which is so fun. And I was like, so also very insecure in my abilities at that time, and still struggle with that now, but a little less so. So I was like, this is great.
Like an imposter syndrome type of thing?
Yeah, like exactly. Like I'm faking it, and I'm not going to know what to do again. There's that thing again. And I wanted to be in that building, One World Trade, where Condé Nast was so badly, but I was just so afraid that I didn't have the skill set. So
how'd you get over that though? How'd you get over that fear?
I mean, I just got the job. I got the job.
You're like, well, that solved that problem. But did you still feel it even when you got the job?
Oh my gosh. The entire first year, I thought my boss was going to come out and say, Haley, this isn't working out. Like,
that's a terrible feeling.
It's an awful feeling. And my husband was in the same building and does not struggle with that mindset, which is actually great because he can kind of help me take a step back. But he was at Vogue, and I was really grateful that I actually didn't end up at Vogue because it really is a really intense environment, and Brides is not. It was a different business, and obviously it's even just bridal in general is a much happier tone. But I had
so true.
Yeah, it was great. But when my then boss was interviewing me, she said, all I want is someone who can write, and I'll teach you the rest. And she was like, and this is a theme, I guess. She was like, if you don't know how to do something, just take a stab and I'll help you. do the rest. So
That's a good manager.
she's an amazing, amazing manager. Honestly, so good. And she really helped me build my confidence. But I was very worried that I was messing it up for a solid year. Only just because I was worried, not because my work was necessarily reflecting that. I mean, I would write a proposal for an advertiser and I would take it to her and she would mark that thing up. Like, don't think that I was getting it perfect. Like my pages were like covered in blue. And blue ink. I know she always wrote in like a blue felt tip pen. And that was really embarrassing for me because I'm a perfectionist and that all of those notes was like making me think that maybe I wasn't getting it, but I fully was learning a new skill and it takes a long time. And I would share that with some of my coworkers and they'd be like, you're being really hard on yourself, Haley. Like this takes a long time to learn. And so I just stuck with it. And I managed jewelry. I started in the jewelry category. So writing kind of cool ideas for jewelry advertisers. And that was a struggling category for us. And right off the bat, I think 4 of my ideas sold. And
that's amazing. But I love that you admitted that I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing because I feel like so many people feel that way. When they're going, especially when you're in a new job, I usually tell folks it should take you about 3 months to even start kind of feeling comfortable. Like you're going to be it's terrible. And even if you're in the same company and you switch jobs, the first 3 months are really, really hard. You're doing with a new manager, potentially. You're learning a new skill set. So it is totally normal to feel overwhelmed and like you're not doing it right. Just don't take yourself. The thing that you didn't do is you didn't take yourself out of the game, which I love.
I wanted to so badly. Like I think because I wanted to be at Condé Nast. It really was like my dream to work for this company. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be there so badly, but I did really feel like I was walking around in that building not deserving to be there just because it didn't feel like it was coming naturally. And I kept getting all of these corrections back in my ideas. And I felt like some things weren't clicking. And I remember there was I was about 6 months into the job and I wrote a really big idea for an advertiser and I took it into my boss at like 4:00. I was behind on it and she was like, Haley, this was not what I was expecting.
Oh no, that's the worst feeling.
It was awful, but she also, like we said, was a really amazing boss and we stayed, she and another girl on my team, we all stayed until 8:00 at night, totally rewriting the idea. And that night, I still have it screenshotted on my phone. I went home and I was like so upset. I cried and I was like so embarrassed. And I was like, I think I'm going to get fired. But she emailed me and she said, I just wanted you to know that I see how hard you're working. And she's like, I forget that you're not experienced in this because you've been doing so well. And
I love that.
She was like, you're learning and you're doing really great. And she was like, I just want you to know that like, it's okay. Like, this is okay. And she, again, amazing manager. Not everyone will have the blessing of an amazing manager, but I really needed to hear that because I was like, I'm going to get fired. Like, this is terrible. But also,
I've had some of those moments before too. Like, I totally screwed this up.
It's awful. But I also was like, I will never make this mistake again. Like, I fully learned what she was looking for and kind of what goes into, from a marketer, putting together a fully cohesive marketing plan. And I've never had that issue again. So it was awful, but even that really kind of big setback, in my opinion, really helped propel me forward because it helped connect the dots of like what I was being asked to do. So I was at Brides for about a year, and then publishers, for anyone who doesn't know, publishing companies usually own a bunch of brands, and because print is dying and print is expensive and digital changes, what's trending in the digital space it's changing so quickly. Publishers are constantly restructuring, like all of the time. So Condé Nast restructured, and I got rolled.
They recently restructured again, didn't they?
They did. Yeah. And on the same day that Refinery restructured too, which was weird.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So I got rolled up into what was called the women's collection, meaning that I was going to be working on the same kind of advertiser category. And I think at the time it changed, but I think I was working on bridal fashion, but I was also working on tech and finance, which was so weird. But
you're like, this is not my wheelhouse.
I was like, very different. So I was working on that category across Brides and Glamour magazine and Allure magazine and Teen Vogue magazine and Self.com.
So you did work at Teen Vogue, kind of,
sort of. No, I did. I worked on Teen Vogue. So what was so crazy is that I went from working with these kind of bridal fashion advertisers have really small budgets. They don't have a lot of money to spend. And I'll say small in that it's $50,000. And I went to working on Google for tech, and they have $1 million budgets. So it was kind of a level up for me. And it was, again, I was so grateful for the experience because I really got to really step outside of the box in terms of what I could do as a marketer. And so I got to work on Google and YouTube, and they were really excited to actually be working with Teen Vogue. So I did work with Teen Vogue a lot. So that was amazing.
So whenever you worked for them, can you elaborate a little bit more about what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
So is it a mixture of creative? Is it a mixture, what are you actually doing on a day-to-day basis? Because I think we often talk about positions.
Yes.
And we don't really know what it means. I have so many people I don't even know if I want to do this. So what's your, what would be a quick day in the life? A 1 minute day in the life.
Day in the life. So advertisers come to publishers to share their brand story through that publisher's lens. So because, let's pick a brand. Glamour magazine reaches women. This is broad strokes, but Glamour magazine reaches women in, the 25 to 35 demo who are excited about fashion, but they're also incredibly empowered. So that might be a great opportunity for Michael Kors, who has a new handbag line, to talk to women through Glamour. And how we do that is at Glamour, I would say, okay, Michael Kors, you want to tell people about this new handbag line, and you're giving me a bucket of money to spend. What I'm going to do is hire 2 influencers to create posts to run on their own handles. So I'll hire Sella Jane and I'll hire Happily Gray, and they'll take a picture. And so whenever you see influencers posting paid partnership with or hashtag ad, a lot of times there's a publisher behind it who kind of made that
interesting
connection. Yeah.
Okay.
So we do that. And then also what we're going to do is we're going to shoot a video. No, you know what we're going to do, because you don't have a lot of money to spend. Fashion advertisers never do. We're going to do an Instagram story on the Glamour handle with one of our editors talking about her top 5 picks for fall, and your handbag's going to be in it. And so again,
I love that. So interesting.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's super fun because, there's so many things you can do. So that kind of thing. And then also I'm going to spend $10,000 just running your banners, your actual ad banners on glamour.com. And it's going to run on the fashion channel. So girls who are, coming to the site to learn about fashion, they're going to see your advertisements on our site. So it can literally, being a marketer for a publisher can run from something as so simple as where we're placing your banners in a smart way to creating custom videos that, look like something we would already be talking about as a publisher, as an editor. And we're going to do it just featuring only your product. So anytime you're scrolling through Instagram and then it says LX Michael Kors, Glamour, X, Dolce & Gabbana, Refinery 29, X Gucci, that is a paid partnership. And the idea is to create, to put your brand, your fashion brand, in a super organic and natural environment so that you, as the consumer, want to read the content. And then when you're shopping that weekend, you're like, oh my gosh, I saw that Gucci bag on Refinery. And here I am at Nordstrom. I want to buy that Gucci bag. All about what we say in the industry, driving consumers down the funnel. And the marketing world is so cool because you get to do whatever is the latest thing on any social media platform. At some point, I'm going to be doing some paid version of it. So I work on Instagram a lot. I am constantly, especially with my newer job, which we'll talk about in a minute, I'm constantly on set at photo shoots. And it's my job to basically be the liaison for the brand and put on my brand hat and say, okay, we need to make sure we're putting more product in so that like it's a little more shoppable for the consumer. So it's photo shoots, it's videos, it's influencers, it's events. It's super fun. Like
that's cool.
It's fun. It's always different.
Yeah. So you were there for about 3 years, and tell us you had your most recent experience. You now work at Refinery 29, and what's the coolest thing about your job there?
Yeah. So I ended up leaving Condé this summer. I was very sad to go, but I kind of had hit a ceiling there where I felt like I wasn't going to move up anytime soon, and I was ready for a little bit more. And they had another restructure coming, and my boss there was like, Haley, I don't know what I can do for you. So she was very honest. So I was like, okay, I'm going to look around. And Refinery 29 was another publisher. It's a website that had been on my radar, on my short list of places I wanted to work. And they're really cool and young. Our mantra is that we seek to help women see, feel, and claim their power. And
woohoo, I like that.
Yeah, it's super cool. And that kind of thought is filtered down through all of the content that we cover. So whether it's, through fashion and it's body positivity and body diversity and size inclusion, or, we talk a lot about what's happening in the political space and wellness and self-care and making sure that
I love Refinery 29. I read y'all's site all the time.
Good. I'm so glad. And it's great. And if you haven't heard of it, you should take a look because it's fun. They also don't take themselves too seriously, which I also like.
Yeah.
So I interviewed and I got this job over the summer, and I did not want to leave, but I was praying for some really specific things. I was looking for the associate director title. I was looking to hit a certain pay grade, and I was looking to, kind of differentiate what I had been learning at Condé Nast. So at Condé, I was on the pre-sale team. So I was always ideating and writing a lot of proposals saying, hey, advertiser, this is how we'll spend your money. But when an idea sold, that would go on to the post-sale team. And they would go to the photo shoots and they would work with the influencers. And it's great. And it was great. And I learned a ton on the front end, but I was ready to I felt like I needed experience on the back end.
On the back end too, yeah.
So I interviewed, and first they called me and they're like, hey, you look great. Your resume looks great, but this position doesn't pay that much or pay as much as you're wanting. And they were like, are you flexible? And I was like, no, I'm not. I've been working for 3 years and
good for you. That's awesome. No, I'm not flexible.
I wasn't and again, I think I got pushed.
Because you were comfortable where you were at too, which is
so
part
comfortable.
of it.
I did not want to leave unless I was leaving for the right thing.
Yeah, walking to something versus running away from something.
Exactly. I was so happy at Condé. I just wanted to be making more money and I wanted a little more responsibility. But in the meantime, my coworkers there are some of my very best friends. So I was having a great time at work every day. So I was in a nice spot. But so they were like, okay, well, and I was like, please keep me in mind. Refinery is on the short list of where I want to work. I would love to stay in touch or come in for a meeting, whatever. They're like, okay, cool. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of a bummer. And then 2 weeks later, they called me back and they're like, hey, we had some conversations and we'd be willing to meet you at what you're asking for.
I love that. How excited were you?
I was like, what? I was like, oh my gosh, God.
Happy dances all around. Gosh. Break out the champagne.
And they were like, do you want to come in? And I was like, yes, of course. And I was still very much waffling about if I wanted to leave or not, but I was like, yeah, I'll just go in. It'll be good to meet people. The title was still a senior manager position. And I was like, you know what? That's an easy thing to change. The salary is harder to change. So
right.
Go in and we'll see. So I went and I had my first meeting with the guy who is now my boss, and he was great. And I actually left very pleasantly surprised. I was like, I actually liked it. It sounded really fun. And it's a post-sale job. And at that point at Condé, my categories had shifted and I was working on fashion and retail, which is my sweet spot because I worked retail for so long. So I know how to talk to retailers. And I love fashion. So I was like, it's the category I want, and it's a lot of photo shoots and it's a lot of events, and that is what I need to be working on. And so I left that first interview and I went on, it was 4th of July, and I went on vacation with my in-laws, and I got an email from the guy who interviewed me, and he said, "Hey, Haley, we loved talking to you. We actually would want to change the title to associate director." And I was like, oh.
Well, that was a God wink for sure.
Again. And like, I've done this several times. My husband and I have done this a lot in our past, especially our past 6 years of marriage, but our past 5 years in New York, because we've prayed super specific prayers. And not because I want to push God to give me what I want, but only just because I think there's certain things that I've wanted to make sure there were a sure thing.
I love that. So talk to me a little bit. That's a great segue, actually.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how your faith has influenced, because obviously I talk a lot about faith in the workplace and just in general. So how would you say, and we've connected on this multiple times, just that, how does God connect into your work life?
I mean, I feel like I'm in New York and in the fashion industry to be Jesus to other people.
Unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, as believers, as Christians, we believe that God gives us talents and passions, and we can use those things to glorify Him. And I believe that God has given me, you know, the gift of, I joke that like shopping is my spiritual gift, but it honestly, I think it is. I think God's given me a passion for fashion so I can use that in this industry. And
your husband has said that too.
Yeah, fully. Like we believe that's why we're here in New York. The fashion industry is really broken, and it's full of a lot of amazing people who are very, very broken and going through hard things. And we feel like we are here to kind of kick out some of that darkness and just share what it can be like to be, you know, like we talk about our marriage a lot and what it's like to be in a committed relationship and be in a good relationship, or what it's like to worry and be super stressed out, and, you know, how I'm able to step away from that because I serve a God who is bigger than that. And just, you know, praying for people
so good
when they go through health issues. Like, it's really as simple as like, I've had coworkers who, you know, I try to kind of walk the line of, and maybe some believers would disagree with this, I don't know, but like being spiritual, but also just letting my actions like really speak for themselves. And my coworkers know that, you know, I'm going to church on the weekends, and they know that I go to small group on Wednesday nights. And I talk about God, but I try very hard to not be overly aggressive about it. But I've had coworkers who have come up to me and they've been like, "Hey, I know that you pray. Will you pray for my friend? Like, her dad's sick." And
that's beautiful.
Such an honor. It makes me like tear up just thinking about it.
I know.
I feel so grateful to just connect with the people that I have.
Yeah. I think that's such an important point, because I think a lot of believers think that in order to serve God in your vocation, you have to be like a professional Christian. You have to be a pastor. If you'd be in ministry, you have to serve with youth, and like, that is not correct at all.
I mean, people are doing great things, but like, there's so many people that are just unchurched and they don't know anything about Jesus, or they don't know what, like,
and you're just showing up as a whole person. You're not like, "Here, let me give you a Bible."
Oh my gosh. Totally. And so I think even if, you know, we work for brands that are very liberal, they're not conservative, but I make it more about the people in the building that I'm dealing with. And you know, actually, it's so funny. I was on set last week at a photo shoot, and one of the models started chatting to me, and she was like asking me about my wedding ring, and she was like, "Did you get married? Where did you get married?" And I was like, I got married at my parents' backyard. And she's like, "But did you," she asked if I got married in a church. And I was like, "No, I didn't, but our pastor married us." And she's like, "Oh, do you go to church here in the city?" And I said, "Yeah, I go to Apostles downtown." She's like, "Well, I go to Hillsong." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." And then we started talking about that, and we kind of like stepped aside, and she was like, I could tell like when you walked in, she was like, I could tell that you were a praying woman. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, well, I was like, she's like, it's so cool that you're working in this industry and you're a Christian. And I was like, yeah, well, you too. And,
right back at you.
and I turned around and I was like, I'm here for like these people behind me, like our photographer and our stylist. I'm like, I'm here because they're my passion. Like these people that I work with are like, honestly, it's such a joy to get to know all these amazing people. So that
which is also not normal because and just in New York in general, right? It's for self, right? And that's what I loved when you first told me about that is like, yeah, you want to do excellent in your work and you want to, achieve and move and grow and all those types of things. But ultimately you guys believe that you're there to love and serve your coworkers. And so, and operating out of that also frees you a lot from the achievement cycle that's very common in lots of careers, right? The success idol or whatever. But even more so in New York City, I personally suffer from that. That is 100% can be my idol if I'm not too careful.
Totally. And I think in the past few months, and, I've been now here in the city for 5 years, and I've been able to see God's track record of how he's like, really provided for me and blessed me in my career. And I've gotten better at taking the pressure off of me and my performance, like, working late or like some campaigns not doing well or some advertisers are going to be upset with me because something went wrong, because stuff goes wrong all the time. I'm able to be like, okay, God, like it really doesn't matter because it matters how I handle my stress around my coworkers and that I don't lash out at them and that I can just be at peace. And it's been, honestly, as work has gotten, as I've been given more responsibility, things get more stressful, but it's helping me take a step back and really remember what my actual purpose is. And because like so much is out of your control, but I can control the way that I act. So it's been interesting. But yeah, I guess like long story short, I got the job at Refinery and
because God had that pretty much ordained and very specific for you.
And I've just been learning so much there. And but it's been more stressful, but I'm trying. I've just met so many amazing people and I'm really enjoying. I've been there for 5 months now and I'm enjoying the fact that it's a very focused environment there. And it's funny because you wouldn't think it, but it's super focused. And I've made a point to like, sometimes you're in the kitchen with someone and they're like not talking to you. And I'm like, hi, Milana, how are you today? And now it's shifting. Like people are saying hi to me and people are like, hey.
Which is such a New York thing too, right? Like, don't talk to me.
Yes. Everyone's just like, they're like, they don't know what to say or I don't know. People are funny, but, I've gotten to know a lot of people and even some of my coworkers who have been there for a long time, they're like, how do you know all these people? And I'm like, I don't know. I just say hi.
Hello.
I just say hi. I don't know. So it's been cool. It's a lot of work there, but I'm learning so much. And, I'm really just learning kind of going back to like what my purpose is here. And it's great to feel fulfilled in your spiritual purpose. More than anything else. I think that's really rewarding.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and just a little bit about how you got into what you got into and how the Lord's been such a huge, obviously intertwined mesh. I know we only talked about that for the last couple of minutes, but I think that's such an important part of the story.
Yes.
Especially as believers, I think we often I always say we drop Jesus off in the parking lot at 9 a.m. We have parking lots in everywhere else in New York, but drop him off at the parking or on the subway, drop him off at the parking lot at 9 a.m. and we pick him up at 5 p.m. And so what would it actually look like if we were able to integrate him into every actual aspect of his life, our lives, because that's what he wants. So I love that you shared a little bit more about that. Last question before we end.
Yes.
What advice would you give to somebody who is looking to get into maybe the fashion industry or looking to get into, the publishing industry or just like general career advice, career life advice? Because I think that, again, they're one and the same.
I think the most helpful thing I've learned when networking and trying to land a new job is to be specific rather than saying like, I'm open, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
And saying like, even if it isn't quite true, like be specific to the person you're speaking to or to the company that they are working for. Because again, like I said, sometimes people are so busy that they have a hard time connecting the dots for you. So rather than saying like, I love fashion, you could say, I love writing and I like being creative. I think I would be good for I saw you had a marketing role open on your site. I think I would be good for that. Or, whatever else that applies to. I'm good at accounting and I would love to work in payroll. Like, be specific so that people can go back to their offices or whatever meetings they have and they say, hey, I actually talked to someone today and they're interested and I know you're hiring. Like, make it easy for them. I think that's been...
The more specific you can be, the better, because that's how you become the unique person for a job, because everybody's doing the generic thing. Yeah. And so what you've done is you're like, I'm super specific about what I can help you with.
Yes.
And I know that I can do the job for you. So it's a mixture of that confidence and specificity. I love that.
Yeah. I think that's been the most helpful thing for us, especially, that's how we've landed in a lot of the places we have, just because we didn't have that speaking for itself on our resumes as much. So we needed to verbalize it.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you again so much for sharing. If people want to get connected with you, where's the best way to do that? Instagram, LinkedIn, a website?
Instagram, I'm such a millennial.
We can put it in the show notes, your Instagram handle.
Great. Hi, Haley Annie, but we'll put it in. And LinkedIn is good too.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to have to connect when I'm in New York in a couple of weeks, but I've loved having you on the podcast, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.